Hey everybody, my name is Sadie Merbarger. I'm a worship leader from Bloomington, Illinois. Today I'm going to kind of start a conversation about stage presence whenever you're leading worship. So I'm going to start out and just tell you a little bit about me, how I know Tim Price, and what I've been doing up until this point in my life. So I met Tim when I was 18 years old. I was on the Harvest traveling worship team. That was actually the first worship team that I had ever been a part of. But after that, I got my undergrad degree in worship ministry from Lincoln Christian University. Whoop whoop. And then later on, I got my master's in ministry studies from Moody Theological Seminary. And right now, I am just working on getting involved at the Vineyard Church in Champaign-Urbana. So that's kind of what I've been up to this far in my life. I've been leading worship since at a lot of different places since I was 18 years old. But yeah, and being a worship pastor is what I want to do for the majority of my life. So I do have a lot of experience with working with different worship pastors and learning from them and being mentored by them. So I'm really excited to share with you guys. But to get started, I kind of had like a little disclaimer. It's really popular for people to ask, well, isn't the heart the most important thing whenever you lead worship? And I would agree that yes, I do think that your heart is the most important part of leading worship. But I think that your worship pastors are wise enough to know that you're not going to be on the team if you don't have the right heart of worship. So then we're starting there. We're assuming that that your heart is in the right place, and we're moving forward. How can I be expressive with my body? How can I communicate better using my body as a worship leader? I believe that we are all worship leaders on stage. So even if you're a bass player or a drums player, any other guitar player, keys, if you're watching this, I think that you can still learn from a lot of what I'm going to say. I'm going to start with kind of the broad, kind of abstract and mental theological headspace before going into some more practical tips. So I believe that worship starts with God. It starts with the work that was done on the cross, and then we as the believers, it's our response. And everything that we do after we say the words, I believe, that's an act of worship. But back to the original Hebrew and Greek, to lie flat on your face, that just means that you are very reverent and you are just very submissive toward God. And because of that, we can learn that there's power in our posture, the way that our body acts. It makes a difference in what we're doing as worshipers. And for so many people, worship and music, it's how they connect with God the best. So I do think that this topic of stage presence when leading worship, that it is really important. Whenever you're thinking about how you're acting on stage, it's really important to think about your culture and to know your congregation and what is appropriate for them. I'm going to kind of say this a few times so that it will sink in, but the goal as a worship leader is it's to not be distracting. So if you are at a very kind of chill, more maybe traditional church, and if you're jumping up and down and waving your hands like this, if that is something that would be distracting and would distract from worship, then that's not what you need to be doing. And on the other hand, if you are at a really charismatic church that they're used to being super expressive in worship, to be more kind of stoic and to maybe just have one hand out, that might be distracting in the other sense. So it is really important to know your congregation. So you wouldn't lead a VBS the same way that you would lead an adult services, and that's true about your church's culture as well. In my opinion, a ton of worship leading and stage presence, it's all about the preparation. So for example, whenever I come to a rehearsal in a church service, I'm going to know all my songs. I'm going to know the melody for sure, the harmony if that's what I'm singing. I'm going to have an idea of the roadmap, so I don't need to be thinking about those things. And because of that, then I can focus more on my stage presence and how I'm leading the congregation. It's kind of like when I was learning how to play drums, and you have two hands doing different rhythms, and then your foot, one or 2 feet, are also doing different rhythms. In order to successfully do all of those things at the same time, one or two of them, they have to become automatic. It has to become so that you don't even have to think about that. That's why preparation is important. So once you don't have to worry about the lyrics or the melody or the harmony, then you can just focus on leading. Another way that I like to prepare is to watch other worship leaders lead, whether it be just other local churches online services, or some of the really big popular churches like Elevation, Hillsong, or Bethel. And sometimes I even get specific enough to watch the people that wrote the song that I'm leading to lead that specific song. I think that since that song came from their own heart and their own relationship with God, then it's really kind of inspiring. It just gives me a good idea whenever I'm going to lead that song what it's about. And another way, probably the final way, well, I have two more ways of being, that will improve worship leading that doesn't have anything to do with your actual body, but to go back and watch videos of yourself leading worship. So sometimes things that you think seems like big motions with your hands, whenever you watch it, it seems like it's very small. And that's something that will really help you improve in the future. Just like if you're a sports player, it's really important to watch your game film, and so you can improve in that way. A final tip on preparation before going into what your body should be doing is to practice your stage presence during rehearsal. This is kind of a tip from Carrie Job, but a lot of times when you're just starting out, it might feel silly or awkward to put your hands forward like this. But we should really be utilizing that time we have in rehearsal to kind of get past that little wall that we have built up, that we might feel awkward or silly by raising our hands or being more expressive in worship. So like I said before, our entire goal is to just not be distracting. I put out a little post on Facebook with a group of worship pastors that I'm a part of, and I asked them questions of what they wish that their team knew, things to do or not to do, and some of the most popular answers I got back are things that I'm guilty of. So a lot of them were distracting behavior, like messing with your in-ears or your packs while the song is going on and not during like a break. I'm definitely guilty of that, but it's something that people's eye will get drawn to quickly. And if you are leading a congregation of like more than 10 people, you can definitely say that someone is going to be looking at you at all times. Someone is going to be looking at the drums player, the bass player. So everything that you're doing, it is really important, and someone's watching you even if you're not leading the song. Alright, so I'm kind of going to start with the top down and then go from there. So I'm going to start with facial expression. Where do I look? Should I be smiling? I like to kind of change it up where I look. I like to sometimes look up if it feels like I'm singing to God and kind of having a moment of personal worship. I also like to kind of look around the congregation. It's a way that people feel engaged. It's engaging whenever someone makes eye contact with you. People do not really like it whenever you look at the floor. It feels like they're not confident, and that's not something that you want to be emulating. I really like to sometimes look at other worship leaders or vocalists on the stage and engage with them, and it makes me feel the sorts of community, and it's something that the congregation really likes to see as well. What to do with your mouth. Always be singing. I can't stress that enough. Even if you're not singing into the mic, even if you're not leading the song, always be singing. And this goes for every instrument player on the stage. I think it's unrealistic of us to expect our congregation to be singing if we're not singing ourselves. Smiling is also one of the easiest ways to instantly improve stage presence. The exception, of course, is when it wouldn't make sense lyrically. So like an example would be My Living Hope. So the lyrics start out, how great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not hide. So just talking about humanity's deprivation, you're not going to be smiling while singing those lyrics. But moving down, oh, also don't make a face if you or someone around you messes up. I'm guilty of that too, but it's something that I've had to work on and catch myself doing a few times in order to improve in that way. A kind of a mantra that I have whenever I think about my body and my posture is to let your outward posture reflect your inner praise. So going back to, yes, the heart is very important, but so is our posture, and that posture should be a representation of what's going on in our heart and in the hearts of the people that are there. I believe that as far as movements go, the slower the better, the slower and the more exaggerated. You always kind of want to be cognizant of the people who are in the very back row in the room. If I do something like this, it's going to look very quick to them and it might not translate very well. Another really quick tip that will instantly improve your stage presence is to move your feet. So whether you're kind of swaying, doing a little step touch, or a little slow step touch side to side, or I really like to move forward a couple steps and then later I might move back a couple steps, but just that any type of movement it's really going to translate on stage. If we think about it, it's our job to lead each other or to lead the congregation into the throne room. That should be our mindset whenever we're leading worship. So by us being expressive, we're giving the congregation permission to be expressive as well. I've heard it said and put really well that the people leading worship on stage, they're not the thermometers. You're not just the same temperature of everyone else in the room, but you're the thermostat. So you are setting the temperature higher. You're not just taking the temperature, you are the one who sets it. So whenever we ask ourselves as worship leaders, whenever we think, why aren't our people singing? Why aren't they engaging? Then it's really important to start with us. It starts with the leaders. And it's just it's a really good challenge for us to be the leaders and to challenge our congregation to engage in worship and to sing more. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the conference.